It's loading and we'll be going live. Well, thank you for coming this evening and welcome to the second part of our series that we're doing now on past lives. My name is Reverend Mary Huber. I'm pastor of CCWH, which stands for the Community Center for Holistic Healing, but this is the arm of it that is known as the Community Chapel of Holistic Healing. We are a non-denominational spiritual fellowship founded in 1977 by Reverend Michelle Luson, a mystic and channel for the multidimensional consciousness. We are placed in the Washington, D.C. area because of a vision she had where Swami Sivananda appeared to her and asked her to start this organization to be here in the D.C. area as a light for the nation's capital. And we have remained here for these past 46 years. We have a lovely website. I hope you will go to it and check out the rest of our activities there at ccwh.com. Now, I would like to begin with the recitation. Oh, I'm sorry. We will begin with the slide for the peace healing. Thank you. Peace prayer.
I apologize, it's taking a minute to load.
Divine Creator, we ask that the light of highest awareness fill the minds and hearts of those who are open to your light. We ask that they be assisted and strengthened in their resolve to achieve peace using peaceful means. May their minds, their hearts, and their actions reflect the divine will to good for all. Comfort, strengthen, and support those who are in a difficult situation in their mind, body, or spirit. Bring confidence to them that your divine hand is at work in their life. Amen.
Again, welcome. And we are here this evening to have a lovely presentation of part 2 of our past life readings. But before we begin, we always start all of our sessions off with the recitation of the 3 healers. This is the Affirmations of Faith, Hope, and Charity, channeled by Reverend Michelle way back in the 70s, where Spirit gave her this information that these will address all of the major centers of your body and create the alignment that is necessary to be at one with God. So we'll begin. Faith affirmation. I believe in the spiritual existence of myself as a perfect image of the divine creator. In this reflection that is my physical embodiment, I have faith in the supreme guidance of my soul for my balance, my needs, and my opportunities. Outside of myself, there are also perfect images, and nothing can delude my thinking otherwise. The hope affirmation, acknowledging my faith in the omnipresence of my divinity. I hope for realization, awareness, and acknowledgement of the existence of the great I am within myself. And the charity affirmation, in understanding faith, in knowing hope, I pledge my actions, my desires, and my thoughts to the performances of myself on the physical planes of the earth to honor, to love, and to enlighten all that is a reflection of the divine outside myself, so that my perfection is imaged back to my Creator. So help me God. These lovely affirmations are available on our website to download if you care to post them and recite them yourself every day, which I highly recommend. Now, this evening, we have Howard Evans returning to do part 2 of his project that he has been collecting past lives from people who have had the relevant readings for their life given to them mostly by Michelle, but by a few other channels as well who are capable of going to the Akashic records and reading them. Howard and Linda Evans have been part of our organization from the very beginning and are a huge support for us. His entire family has also supported us because Howard and Linda were married by our founder, Reverend Michelle Lusan, way back in the fresh ages when we began, and her was probably her first, I guess, wedding that she performed. But anyway, Howard has a great wealth of information about metaphysical topics. He's studied with others, teachers as well as Michelle, across the country. And his project now to bring this information about past lives and make it fresh and make it more relatable to us has been rewarding in a part 1. If you haven't seen it, go back and find it. So tonight we're going to have part 2, and I'm going to turn the evening over to Howard Evans. Thank you, Howard. So you're going to put...
You muted, Howard.
Well, thank you, Mary, and welcome everyone. I'm pleased you've joined us. I think we can share some pretty important information, not just on past life readings that have been given in this group, but I'm going to endeavor to explain to you how it actually works. And that's because they've told us how it works. So what I'd like to do to start out with is a reminder of what the project is, why we're doing this, as well as who's doing it. So let me bring up a couple slides here. I'm looking, oh, here we go. All right, can everybody see my slides okay?
Sure.
All right, the reason we're doing this series of presentations and group discussions that are inspired by past life readings is we wanted to see if we could gather a greater amount of information about those of us that are currently in the group and had been in the past, and understand our relationships, not just in the physical world, but actually in the multidimensional world, because we are multidimensional beings. That is one reason those on the other side that give these past life readings, that is one reason they do it, is not just because it's interesting, not at all, but because it's interesting, but because they want us to understand that we're multidimensional beings. We have eternal life, and we've lived many, many lives, and it gives a fuller and better understanding of ourselves and others. So we are gathering a clearer picture of of us, and these readings and these experiences go back almost 45 years. That's how long the group's been going. And some of the readings predate that. Some are more recent. So I'll give some examples of readings, and we're going to talk about where they came from and what the sources were. But all of these readings, as we'll see, are from current or prior members of this organization. And almost invariably, if you are currently in this organization or were in the past, you previously lived in Atlantis or Egypt, ancient Tibet, thousands of years ago in Tibet, in Peru, the Yucatan, and any number of spiritual initiation schools. So I have already distributed about 80 pages of life readings to those people who participated and submitted their information and readings. That's a wealth of information. So just in a summary in that, 5 of the participants are and were CCWH ministers, and 8 of us were laypersons. And just as a summary I talked about this last time, one of the questions to all those submitting copies of their life readings, so we could collect them, as many as people have been able to find, and archive them. 5 of the people came into this solar system, and this is according to the sources that came through the channels. It's from their sources, not just what people think, but 5 of the people came through the Arcturus system into this system and began incarnating into the earth. So, and as you can see, we gave a code to everybody that submitted their past life readings, primarily for privacy. So there's the 5 coded individuals. They know who they are, and obviously I know who they are, but nobody else does. So that there were several people that were concerned about it, and I thought it was valid, and so we just copied the example of the ARE and the Edgar Casey readings and gave people a code. 2 of the people came into this system through the star system Sirius. 5 of the people came through the Pleiades, and one of the person that information wasn't given. And what we've determined, not surprisingly, is that all those people submitting this information seem to be closely connected as well in previous past lives. And the sources and the source of Michel Luzon made it very plain that the reason they're given is to awaken us and to begin the process of atonement, redemption, and transformation. And actually, all of us have been doing that probably all of our life, because that's why we came in. And that's been going on for 49 years during the cosmic cycles. Cosmic cycles started in 1958 and they went to 2008. And interestingly, after 2008 is when Michel Luzon left CCWH and moved, I believe, down to Virginia Beach. So she did complete that 49-year cycle. That cycle was designed by the Brotherhood of Light, the Ascended Masters, as well as the foundation of the organization, AMS and CCWH. And not surprisingly, we've all appeared to be a soul group with common purpose and common interlaced lives. And we're really here. There's individual reasons why you're here that you're working on, but collectively we've come here to hold the light and bring in a new era of peace and prosperity. And each one of you watching this and participating tonight are clearly performing that purpose. Edgar Cayce himself, who was known as Ra-Ta in ancient Egypt, and Dr. James La Follette, who gave many, many of the hundreds of health readings through Michel Lasson, and was known as Art in ancient Egypt, and many members of the CCWH, we are all linked in the same spiritual purpose and spiritual beliefs, and we're present and working together in past lives. And this is plainly stated in many of those readings. So there's 80 pages of them, and we're only going to probably review half a dozen tonight. But if you have copies, or if Mary makes them available, that's up to the organization. You could read in detail all these interconnections of our lives. Yes, and then I want to tell you, of those 80 pages, there's various sources of the information and the readings. They didn't all come from Michel Lasson. The source, or that's what we call the source, that did come through Michel Lasson. And the source, when it's identified as the source, is primarily she's been given the Akashic records from the higher source, or the Book of Life. Dr. James La Follette, however, that also came through Michel Lasson. His primary purpose was the Nemo cone and giving health readings and helping us understand not only our current health issues, but carryovers from our past life. And so those sources, although from the Brotherhood of Light and the Ascended Masters, are not exactly the same. Also, many of the a few of the readings I talk about come from the source via the Akashic records via Edgar Cayce. And the readings from Michel Lasson, it clearly states 3 or 4 places that Michel Lasson was able to attain the exact same source as Edgar Cayce. And I just never entirely knew that. And I think that's fascinating. Another source of the information was through a man known as Marshall McLean. He did know Michel Lasson. They did know each other for a short period early on when they were at Virginia Beach. I'm not sure when that was, maybe in the 70s, but I'm not positive. But that source through Marshall McLean was St. Paul, and he called himself Paul. And there's a number of readings that were given through that source. Saint Germain came through Leonard Justinian, who we often had as a guest speaker at CCWH. Saint Germain also came through Sherry, who is and was a minister, and at one time the pastor for CCWH. Another reading was by what's known as Ma, and that came through a psychic medium, a minister in California. And there's a few of them that were given and people submitted that came from past life regressions, from very dramatic dreams, or even from out-of-body experiences. And so I think I want to share my understanding after a lot of years of research, how are past lives actually given? And interestingly enough, the information comes through what's known as the language of light. And the language of light is an instantaneous form of communication that can come from the infinite mind or the source. It can come from the company of heaven, whether it's ascended masters or angels or saints, or it can come through whole light beings. Not always positive. It's not always a positive thing that comes through, and it's primarily up to the person channeling or receiving the information to set the resonance. And that's why I personally always invoke the Christ consciousness and the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. So the language of light uses the eternal light, the supraluminal light, not the light of the sun, although that's a piece of it, but it's way, way beyond. It's the light of creation. And in the supraluminal light, it carries codes and designs and a crystalline light format, and they'll come down into the channels or the receiving meditator's 8th and 9th chakra. The communication is a form, it's not in English. All right. Cosmic language of light is obviously not in English. It comes through a form of pulsating light and geometries of light, ideographic cybernetics. They're pictograms, they're geometric forms of sacred geometry. They fuse together color, light, sound, and mathematical indexes. And what's important to understand is every one of us, every human from the Adamic race walking on the earth is a transducer. We are receiving of the light and the language of light, and we can also transmit it back. Those of you that healers will understand this. So this information is downloaded, and it comes through a multidimensional levels of consciousness. It'll come into our subconscious mind, down through the chakra system, and it'll come into a crystalline array structure that's like an array, if you know what an array is. And it's known as the urim and the tumen. And the urim and the tumen is somewhat in our pineal gland. And think of it this way, as the pixels in the screen on your computer you're looking at. that's an array of pixels. And so the information in these pictograms and ideograms, which are forms of light vibration, come in, and that's how they are received. And even the Bible talks about the Urim and the Thummim. It can also be an external construct, meaning an array of stones. That the ancients many times, or even Stonehenge, is an array and conglomeration of a geometrically designed receiving array that if you're able to resonate and tune to it, you can receive the higher light information. All right, what I was going to try to explain next, I've told you there's many different sources. So this is a reading that was given to AC 103. And there was a founders dinner in 2005 at the Friends Meeting House in Leesburg. Some of you may remember that. And in that, it discussed the Nemo code. So it's telling us, then we will begin to close the channel reflecting to AC10C. Oh, sorry, I need to go back up. To not do the consulting. And once the channel was defined as Nemo, this means once in time when Michel Luçon was doing these readings, they identified the channel as Nemo. But they found that they had to expand to encompass other areas besides healing. So the Nemo cone was primarily set up as a cone of light coming into Michel Luçon and her higher chakras for the purpose of healing. But then they decided to change the name of it to the source. And some of you may remember these very things happening because of the ancient wisdom mystery schools and the information they wanted to also provide besides just healing. And this reading also tells us, and this was back in 2005, but in 2005, it's saying there were about 50 other channels alive in the world tapping into this same information. So with a population of more than 1 billion, that isn't many, but 50 channels teaching hundreds and hundreds of people is a significant thing. So I'm picking off some readings I think give information that's kind of fascinating. That's all I'm trying to do. And this is another reading, it talks about atonement, redemption, and transformation, and Mary teaches that quite frequently, and at Christmas time, that's what Christmas is about, and that's why these readings were given. But it also, I think interestingly, this reading tells us about the Temple of the Red Dragon, which was in ancient Tibet thousands of years ago, 3,000 years ago. It had 3 libraries, a hospital, a pharmacy for natural healing, and it was pretty much a socialistic society. So I just found that very interesting, and I'm sharing it. This is a chart. I'm not going to go through it. It's a chart. I already told you, I listed the sources of the readings, of the 80 odd pages of readings, who delivered the information, and the kind of information it was, and anything I thought was noteworthy about it. So in many cases, the Great White Brotherhood provided it, and they identified it themselves as the Great White Brotherhood. But I also want you to notice that there's different kinds of channeling or ways to get the information. These first 5 were trance mediums, which basically Michel Lusson was one, but so were these other. These were the sources. A trance medium generally rolls out their own consciousness, and the source coming in overlays the higher light. Using the language of light, they can also tap into the brain of the source, and Michelle spoke English, so they can transfer immediately the language of light into the English language that the channel knows. So they use the lexicon of the channel. And so we're very familiar with that kind of a mediumship. A psychic medium doesn't necessarily have to be a trance medium. They don't go in a trance. They'll just open up and psychically receive the information. The information will have to go through the filter of that person. There's 2 other sources of a great deal of information that I'm familiar with that I wanted to share. One of them is Master Lantos. Master Lantos provided all the biogenesis information that's come through. It still comes through, and it's in their website. That was different. That was received by Cindy Demaray. Cindy Demaray was able to stay physically conscious, and Lantos would manifest out of the 4th and 5th dimension, manifest and stand before her, and she could see and hear him and would then record it. And so that's a physical manifestation and presence, and even the Bible talks about a few of those kind of events. Edgar Cayce, interestingly, is different. Yes, he did go in a trance, but actually, and they did use his voice and English language, but he actually, through their own readings, describes that his consciousness would rise up into the higher dimensions to the Akashic records, and he would collect them, and he would get the information, read them, and bring it back down. That's different than someone coming from up there and bringing the information down. So that was the power and unusual ability that Edgar Cayce had. But interestingly, he said, every one of us can do that. And then, of course, there's Enoch as a source, and Mary's familiar with this. Some of you might be. That's the current information coming through the Hertogs, Dr. J.J. Hertog and his wife Desiree. I know them personally. I've been to their seminars, and I've had dinner with them, and they actually they came to Leesburg, and in the Friend's house gave a seminar. That's given through revelation, and that's a even different kind of information. J.J. Hertalk in the early 70s. He was very spiritual, a young man, about 30 probably. He was taken up into what we know as the Merkabah. The Merkabah, it's in the Bible as well. It's a wheel within the wheels. And the Merkabah puts a shell around the person, and Enoch put a shell around, a protective shell, probably a crystalline light shell. And he took him up into the heavens. And there he showed Dr. J.J. Hertalk all around and how the cosmos works, how it's organized, all of the company of heaven, and many of the predictions to come, and an explanation of the Alpha Omega, or this time period in history. And that was imprinted on him. All right, it's not even like a download. It was just instantly, completely imprinted on him. And when he came back, if you know the amount of information that's in his 64 keys of Enoch and the new 10 keys, it's just no one could possibly remember that. But it's very, very fascinating and enlightening information. So that's what's known as Revelation, and presumably the Urantia book was given by Revelation, if anybody knows that book. And this is a chart kind of what I just told you. I'm not going to go through it, but it's the sources. It's each of the people that contributed, the sources, some of the readings, the locations they lived, and anything noteworthy. And so those of you that participated and provided your readings, I made a little chart here. All of these people, this is their code, their personal code of who they are, so they'll know. They all had readings that they submitted when they lived in Atlantis. And these individuals lived in ancient Egypt, at the time primarily of Rata or Edgar Cayce. And these participants all, and you'll notice most of them are the same, aren't they? They lived in Tibet, primarily the Temple of the Red Dragon, 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. And also, interestingly, all of these participants each had separate readings, and they were part of the Essenes. And if you're familiar with the Essenes, they were at the time and preceded Jesus, and they were essentially responsible for, because like begets like, they were responsible for setting up the resonance on the physical earth that attracted the Christ. So the Christ, the Christos, came in because there was a resonating vibration that would match and receive him. And Mother Mary and her parents were Essenes. And Edgar Cayce has a whole book about that if you're interested. All right, I won't go too long tonight. We noticed on the chart that the majority of the life readings were given by what they identified themselves as the Great White Brotherhood. So let's quickly talk about who and what is the Great White Brotherhood. It's often just called the Brotherhood of Light or the White Brotherhood. And it's just basically the ascended masters, those that have walked, you would have to have walked the earth and overcome your karma and the temptations of the body and all of the earth and you would then be able to ascend. And so many of the saints are part of that. Many of those in the Old Testament are part of that. And together they work to help bring about the restoration of the earth after the fall of man in Atlantis, mankind, womankind. And it's basically they work together with the Christ, with the God Most High, with the angels, and they're a collective consciousness available to everybody all the time, using the language of light and the healing light. So here's a reading from Edgar Cayce. Somebody asked, way back probably in the 30s or 40s, is Virginia Beach to be safe, meaning from all those earth changes that he gave? And of course, what he said is Virginia Beach is the center and the only seaport and center of the White Brotherhood. I found that really interesting. I had never heard that before. And here's a reading by Michel Luçon. But the seeds of tomorrow are now being sown, and the collective sources, the White Brotherhood, the ancient wisdom coming out of former past mystery schools in Tibet, in Egypt, in Judea, in Greece, even as far away as an ancient pre-Mayan school, they will sit together in what might be called a collective New Age philosophy. So they're not only working to help us with our past and our present, but they're helping us form our new age and our new understanding of a world of peace and prosperity. So that came through Michel Luçon. I found that very interesting. And of course, I've been over this before. So there was the reading in the Edgar Cayce Center where it tells us that the Master Jesus and John the Baptist also went into the Great Pyramid to get their final initiation. Now, what you got to understand is that would have been 10,000 years after the Great Pyramid, which is a center of initiation for the Brotherhood of Light. That would have been 10,000 years after it was built. So the Great Pyramid was built about 12,000 years ago. And 2,000 years ago, Jesus and John the Baptist, even then, went into the Great Pyramid for their final initiation. Fascinating information. And here's another one. I might have told you last time, but I always found it very interesting. This reading was given in 2001, September 11th. So it was a few days after 9/11. But one of the interesting things, because if you got a copy of all the readings, it's very interesting and I'm not going to go over it now. What the source said was the cause of 9/11, and the source through Michel Luçon gives a whole discussion about 9/11. But this was just one little part of that reading. And it says, Dr. La Follette, as a master soul, has disguised himself as a simple physician attending the sick, when in reality, he is a member of the White Brotherhood and one of the hierarchies of the masters. And then he goes on to talk about when the cone was closed in 2008, but that was a different, I just wanted to point that out. So we understand when we hear these terms, and was so much going on in CCWH and AMS, but we're each a separate individual and we only have our little tiny experience. But as you read all these readings, you get an immense understanding of so much going on behind the scenes and within the group. All right, I won't go through any more on who the Brotherhood of Light is. I think that's clear. We understand Nemo. One thing I found interesting, some of you might remember Michelle had a twin sister, Dottie, Mella. And it explained that during Michelle and Dottie's lifetime, the Nemo cone merged with the Jupiterian cone. I had never heard the Jupiterian cone of light until one of the participants issued their readings, and there's paragraph after paragraph what the Jupiterian light was and why it merged with Nemo. So, yeah, a good part of my life, I've been a member of CCWH, but there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't know and missed. So I encourage you, if you have a copy of, get a couple glasses of wine and read those 80 pages, not all in one sitting. It's another chart. I think I'll close there. I hope it was helpful. It's just more information and kind of what I experienced going through these readings. So I'm going to come back to you and Mary, and I'm hope you enjoyed it. There's a ton more information. Obviously, I covered 3 pages of 80 maybe.
We can do part 3, 4, 5, sequels.
Well,
Thank you so much, Howard. That was
You're
very enlivening and reminding of some of the things that I had heard. I need to hear it again. It uplifts me, and I hope everyone else finds it uplifting as well, because the divine purpose for all of us is so important. And those readings were so specific that it was very encouraging and gave everybody a nice boost into the light. But thank you very much, and I do expect you back. So we'll set that up.
no, thank you.
And I'll make sure if I'll be in touch with you about the whole 80 pages and making sure that that's accessible to everyone. If they haven't, if they didn't, if they lost it or if they can't find it, we'll make sure everybody has it. So thank you so much.
Great. Glad to hear it.
All right. Well, at this time, we go into a period of meditation, and I think this might be a good time to, for those present, because they are people who have submitted their past lives, just to do kind of a journey back again in time, looking at where you've been, possibly. Some people might decide to go into the future, but anyway, it will be a lovely visit to the inner realms where all of this information is available to you and where you can now reconnect with it through some meditation. And some of this has to do with being guided. So a lot of it has to do with guided imagery. So as you're seated and comfortably where you are, and closing your eyes and knowing all of this information that is really swirling around you in your brain and your greater brain that is not involved in your physical, You can now sink into this. And I'd like you to begin going within in the direction which you find comfortable, but we'll do step by step. You can go down steps or you can go up steps. And you put your foot on the doorstep, of a doorway that you might be able to find now within your mind, within your imagination. You go into a doorway and find there are steps to take. And these incremental deepening of your consciousness, uplifting you, guiding you within, are achieved by slowly putting your foot on the first step. I want you to feel the step under your foot. Create the feeling in your feet that you are taking this real, deep, exciting journey. And you go down to the next step with the next foot down. Feel how solid that step is. Feel the sensation. The sole of your feet is created by this step. And you go down slowly, step by step, taking your time, feeling the step. Each step taken is felt, is experienced, and the next step. And you journey more and more down the steps or up. And keep this rhythm going. Experience the feeling of each and every step. It's not a matter of counting as much as it is experiencing the deepening and the deepening. And you know that you are aided by those in spirit who are waiting to visibly greet you when you reach the final step. The glorious light of these beings is brilliant, and they now encourage you movement forward with them. Your intention has been set to visit an area where something from your past experience can be experienced again. It can be revealed in a book, or even stepping into the scenery of the day, of the time that you lived, in the era that you lived. surrounded by the sights and sounds and the feeling of being there. The feeling of being there might translate as visual, as hearing, as a sense of smell, a touch of a familiar object to you at that time. Use all of your senses to bring yourself into a lovely time. It gained for you the grace that you are experiencing now. It preceded this lifetime so that you would be successful in this one. And you spend some time here now. Wait. See, hear, and feel. And having been given the grace to experiencing your own information, we begin to withdraw from this place, accompanied by those who have aided us, and we retrace our steps. And you are assisted back, ascending or descending the steps quicker than you went down, reorienting yourself to the lower dimensions, back into the physical, where we thank God and those who helped us and helped God to present this to us. We are grateful for this experience. We are grateful for this journey, and we are grateful for your help, Father, Mother, God. And when you're ready, you will come back refreshed, rested, feeling comfortable, and feeling uplifted. I thank you for attending with the meditation with us this evening. And now I would like to remind you that CCWH has been serving the greater good for 44 years and counting. Actually, it's 46 now. And we count on your generous donations. With your help, we are able to provide spiritual awareness to improve lives and help build a brighter future. Donations, both big and small, make us what we are doing possible. So help us help others by making a donation today. You can go to our website at ccwh.com, and there is a PayPal button, or you can donate either by PayPal or one of your traditional credit cards. And we thank you for that in advance. And I'd like to bless the offering. Father, Mother, God, you are the giver of every good and perfect gift. Give us grateful hearts that we may share freely with others all you have given us. Amen. And again, I thank you for attending this evening. And we will close with our traditional circle. Join hands in your imagination, and we can all sing along with our closing hymn, Let There Be Peace on Earth. The words that we have always traditionally said are on the screen.